Ji-hye has two extremely beautiful and lovely daughters. Moreover, she is also the daughter-in-law of one of the richest tycoon families in Korea. Anyone who looks at her admires Ji-hye's perfect life, but no one expected that Ji-hye would always live in hell. Ji-hye's husband beats and tortures her every day. Even when Ji-hye was about to give birth, her husband still beat her, causing her to miscarry. Ji-hye's mother-in-law is not a good person either. Whenever she has the chance, her mother-in-law tortures and scolds Ji-hye. Ji-hye has lived in such a heartless husband's family for 7 years, but now she doesn't want to endure it anymore. Ji-hye wants her husband and mother-in-law to pay for their cruel actions. Ji-hye used to be a famous MC and had a bright future, but after getting married, she gave up her job to wholeheartedly take care of her family. But the life of a wealthy family is not as simple as Ji-hye imagined. From the beginning, Ji-hye's mother-in-law Ji-sun looked down on Ji-hye because she was from a poor family. Ji-sun thought that Ji-hye wanted to take over her family's property, so Ji-hye tried best to seduce her son. Therefore, she always found ways to make things difficult for Ji-hye. Every night before going to bed, Ji-hye had to prepare a cup of hot tea. Then, Ji-hye had to personally bring it to Ji-sun's bed and say goodnight before she could sleep peacefully. This was the rule of her husband's family, but this was not enough. Before going to bed, Ji-sun would tell Ji-hye what she wanted to eat for breakfast. Then, she asked Ji-hye to wake up early to prepare everything. Having chosen to marry into a wealthy family, Ji-hye could only swallow her bitterness. In order to buy the raw fish that Ji-sun likes to eat, Ji-hye has to set her alarm clock to 4 a.m. Ji-hye wakes up early and runs to a seafood market in another city to choose the freshest fish. When she gets home, Ji-hye is not allowed to ask a maid to help her, but has to cook it herself and serve it on the table. Even so, Ji-sun still thinks that it is a given. Ji-hye's husband, Tae-wook, is even more outrageous. He is completely different from when he was chasing Ji-hye. Tae-wook hardly comes home at night. On the rare occasion when he does come home, he is drunk. Ji-hye not only has to pretend that nothing happened, but she also has to prepare clothes and ties for Tae-wook and wake him up to go to work. Ji-hye wants to ask her husband why he treats her like that, but Tae-wook says that his previous wives have all gone through the same thing. Then he tells Ji-hye to get used to it. Ji-hye is extremely angry and sad. Ji-hye wants to find Ji-sun to confide in her, but she secretly agrees with her son's actions. Ji-sun thinks that Ji-hye is nosy. Moreover, Ji-sun deliberately does not use the maid and makes Ji-hye clean the house alone. Even so, Ji-hye still tried to endure. Only when she really couldn't stand it anymore did Ji-hye dare to secretly vent all her anger into the cup. Ji-hye endured like that for the sake of her two lovely children every day. In addition to serving her husband's family, Ji-hye also had to take care of her children's studies and pick them up. But Ji-hye considered it a joy because in this heartless family, only the two children were her only spiritual support. But the unexpected happened. Tae-wook listened to his mother's instigation and wanted to run for counselor. In order to build a good image, Tae-wook deliberately invited the media to interview him. He even asked Ji-hye to bring her daughter along. Ji-hye knew what kind of person Tae-wook was, so she didn't want to participate, but she didn't have the right to choose. When Ji-hye learned that the person interviewing Tae-wook was her sister-in-law's brother, she deliberately called her sister-in-law to ask for help. Hye-ji hoped that her sister-in-law's brother wouldn't let the camera focus on the two children. After all, they were running for a counselor, so Ji-hye was worried that the two children would encounter some unforeseen risks. Unexpectedly, her sister-in-law mocked Ji-hye for being a woman who married a rich man. Only when necessary did she think of calling. Her sister-in-law always blamed Ji-hye. Hearing her sister-in-law say that, Ji-hye also felt guilty, so Ji-hye had to use the excuse of going to buy food to secretly go back to her mother's house to visit her mother. Ji-sun looked down on Ji-hye's family and was afraid that Ji-hye's family would embarrass her, so after getting married, she did not allow Ji-hye to visit the mother. Ji-hye's mother knew that she had two lovely grandchildren, but she had never met them. Ji-hye had no choice but to take out her phone and show her mother the lovely pictures of her two children. On the day of the interview, although Ji-hye's sister-in-law promised to help Tae-wook in order to show off to the reporters how much he loved his family, so he did not discuss it with Ji-hye in advance and just put the pictures of the two children in front of the media. At this time, Ji-hye was really angry. She remembered what she had endured for the past 7 years. It was all to protect two children, but Tae-wook was so unreasonable. Ji-hye decided not to endure it any longer. Just as Ji-hye was planning her revenge, the opportunity for her to escape this situation came. Unexpectedly, Ji-hye's father-in-law Man-ho called her to meet him privately. He told her to hand over the family business and then go to the company to take on the position of CEO. He always felt that she was not simple. Over the years, he had seen Ji-hye's endurance and sacrifice. His foolish son wanted to run for a counselor, so he hoped that Ji-hye could do business and build a career to support his son well. Ji-hye could not miss such a good opportunity. She did not think much and agreed to his request. From now on, she would prepare to take over the company step by step. and then pay back all the humiliation she had suffered over the years. To show his respect for Ji-hye, Man Ho also asked all the senior directors of the company to come and welcome her to her new position. When it comes to compensation, Ji-hye says that she only wants some shares of the company because only then can she gradually take over the company and complete her revenge plan. Man-ho is not angry when he hears Ji-hye say that, but is very happy. He did not expect Ji-hye to have such great ambitions. He strongly supports Ji-hye's courage and bravery, but in order to test her true ability, he decided to let her manage a hotel first. If Ji-hye could achieve high results, shares or anything else would not be a problem. Ji-hye finally entered her own office. Only then did she feel that the hellish life she had endured for the past 7 years was gradually coming to an end. Meanwhile, Ji-sun still did not know about this. She was still arrogant and aggressive on the street. When she went out, Ji-sun accidentally met her ex-daughter-in-law. Seeing that her ex-daughter-in-law did not come to greet her, Ji-sun immediately became unhappy. Ji-sun scolded her ex-daughter-in-law for being rude. Ji-sun thought that even though this girl was divorced with her son, this girl was still her ex-daughter-in-law, so this girl had to greet her when they met. But the ex-daughter-in-law did not show any respect and scolded Ji-sun for being crazy and then turned around and left. Ji-sun was extremely angry. She intended to go home and vent her anger on Ji-hye, but now she knew that Man-ho had promoted Ji-hye to the CEO of the company. Ji-sun immediately went to him to ask, and she even wanted to beat her husband up. Man-ho was extremely angry. He couldn't stand this crazy woman anymore. After being beaten by her husband, Ji-sun went to find her son to cause trouble. She said that a daughter-in-law should stay home to do housework and take care of the children. Ji-hye dared to go to work at the company without her permission. This was unacceptable to her, but she forgot one thing, that the person behind Ji-hye was her husband Man-ho. How could Man-ho let this crazy woman act so recklessly? Man-ho said that he was the master of this family. Once he decided to let Ji-hye join the company, no one could change it. Although Ji-sun was angry, she had no way to deal with Ji-hye. Ji-sun didn't know that Ji-hye's revenge had only just begun. After today, Ji-hye would pay back all the humiliation she had endured for the past 7 years. After 7 years of enduring, Ji-hye understood that what made Ji-sun the most angry was making her lose face in front of those ladies. In order to punish Ji-sun, Ji-hye of course did not hesitate to use any means. Therefore, Ji-hye prevented Ji-sun from giving her friend a hotel VIP card. Ji-sun angrily scolded Ji-hye, but this made Ji-sun lose all face. Ji-sun was so angry that her blood pressure rose, but this was only the beginning of Ji-hye's revenge plan. Then Ji-hye targeted Ji-sun's confidant. Ji-hye asked Mira to be her spy, but Mira had Ji-sun's backing, so she completely ignored Ji-hye. Mira flatly refused Ji-hye's request. Ji-hye appeared, very calm because everything was within her expectations. Ji-hye brought out a set of documents. Inside was evidence that Mira and her boyfriend embezzled company assets. If Mira did not agree, Ji-hye would publish this evidence. Faced with Ji-hye's threat, Mira had to change sides. From then on, Mira became the spy that Ji-hye arranged for Ji-sun. After doing all of this, Ji-hye still felt it was not enough. Then, Ji-hye asked Ji-sun to pay for all her expenses at the hotel, because Ji-sun spent tens of billions won at the hotel every year. That way, the hotel would not be able to make a profit. Ji-sun was completely mad. The hotel belonged to her family, so she could use it however she wanted. Ji-sun also insulted Ji-hye as a country girl and could not understand the luxurious lifestyle of the rich, but Man-ho raised both hands in support of Ji-hye's way of doing things. He admired Ji-hye's decisiveness even more. Looking at his wife next to him, Man-ho could only sigh. Why is Ji-sun also a woman? But the gap between Ji-sun and Ji-hye is so big. Faced with Man-ho's stubborn attitude, Ji-sun had no choice but to swallow her anger. She was no longer as majestic as before because she was afraid of being beaten up by Man-ho again. What Ji-hye didn't expect was that, although Mira agreed to be Ji-hye's spy, behind her back Mira told Ji-sun everything about Ji-hye. Ji-hye knew about this but was not scared because everything was going as she wanted. If Ji-sun knew everything, Ji-hye would openly declare war on Ji-sun. Then Ji-hye used her power to transfer Mira to a distant branch. Ji-sun was furious when she heard about this. The poor daughter-in-law that she had bullied before now dared to look down on her. So that Ji-sun was determined to teach Ji-hye a lesson. With Man-ho's strong support, Ji-hye took office as the company's director. On the first day of her tenure, Ji-hye fired the senior figure in the company. When Ji-sun heard about this, she immediately went to tell her husband. Ji-sun said that Ji-hye was only suitable for staying at home to do laundry and cooking. How could a country girl know how to do business? But Man-ho was not angry but laughed happily. He agreed with Ji-hye's way of doing things. That hotel had been losing money for 5 consecutive years because these people were just sitting around enjoying themselves. Moreover, they always find ways to embezzle the budget. Man-ho still didn't dare to do it, so Ji-hye did it for him. Through this incident, he saw even more that Ji-hye was a business genius. As for Ji-hye, after dealing with the useless seniors in the company, Ji-hye immediately focused on improving the hotel environment and improving the quality of the food. Seeing Ji-hye work systematically, Ji-sun was furious. Ji-sun absolutely could not let Ji-hye sit on her head, so Ji-sun thought of another dirty trick. Because she couldn't interfere in the company's affairs, Ji-sun would sabotage her family's affairs. Ji-sun deliberately fired the tutor who had tutored the children before, and then invited Mira to take charge of the children's studies, but that was still not enough to satisfy Ji-sun's anger. Knowing that Ji-hye was very busy with the company, she deliberately set a new rule. Ji-sun required Ji-hye to wake up at 3 a.m. to prepare breakfast. At the same time, Ji-hye has to take responsibility for educating her new sister-in-law. Currently, Ji-hye has not yet fully taken control of the company, and it is not time for revenge, so Ji-hye has to obey. Right from the moment So-hee first came to her husband's house, she discovered her mother-in-law's contemptuous gaze. The reason is because So-hee dresses too rustic. When Ji-hye saw So-hee, she remembered herself when she first came to her husband's house. In order for So-hee not to make the same mistake as Ji-hye, Ji-hye deliberately took So-hee to choose some luxurious, modest clothes. Ji-hye also gave So-hee an expensive imported car. After that, Ji-hye told So-hee all of Ji-sun's habits so that So-hee could quickly adapt to the lifestyle in this family. But So-hee still made mistakes. Just because So-hee wore sloppy clothes while eating breakfast, she was scolded by Ji-sun. Ji-hye knew about this and quickly bought So-hee suitable clothes to wear while eating breakfast. The two helped each other to deal with Ji-sun, but Ji-sun also refused to sit still. In order to chase Ji-hye away, Ji-sun deliberately let Mira stay overnight. Meanwhile, Tae-wook walked around the house in his pajamas. Mira was not afraid of anything. This scene was just caught by Ji-hye when she came home from work. It turned out that all of this was Ji-sun's plan. Ji-sun wanted to use this method to force Ji-hye to quit her job, because what Ji-hye cared about most was her two children. Ji-hye knew for sure that this was Ji-sun's trick, so she chased Mira away. But Mira was Ji-hye's rival after all, so she didn't agree easily. With Ji-sun's backing, Mira became even more stubborn. Mira's goal was to steal Ji-hye's position. As for Tae-wook, when he found out that his father had given Ji-hye manage a hotel, he immediately asked her for a lot of money. Ji-hye didn't agree to Tae-wook's request, so he beat her, but Ji-hye still endured because the time for revenge had not come yet. Over the years, Ji-hye has not sat still. Ji-hye has been quietly developing relationships that are beneficial to her. Now Man-ho has Ji-hye managing a hotel. Sooner or later, Ji-hye will trample Ji-sun and Tae-wook under her feet. Ji-hye doesn't understand why Tae-wook can do such embarrassing things in front of his two daughters, but Tae-wook thinks he's not wrong. His previous wives all suffered like that. He even beat and scolded Ji-hye. Ji-hye has to pretend like nothing happened. She has to cooperate in acting out a sweet husband-wife drama with him in front of the media. Having been bullied by her husband and mother-in-law for 7 years, Ji-hye finally finds their weak point. That day, Mira was introducing a painting to Ji-sun and Tae-wook. Ji-hye happened to see this scene. Ji-sun and Tae-wook reacted so tensely that Ji-hye immediately became suspicious. Ji-hye immediately asked a lawyer to investigate painting and actually discovered the problem. It turned out that Ji-sun colluded with the stupid Tae-wook to cheat the company. After buying these two paintings at a cheap price, they quoted a high price to the company. Mira was the one behind the plan. Because of this, the company was cheated out of tens of billions. Man-ho was very satisfied with what Ji-hye had shown in the past. He told Ji-hye that if she could revive the hotel within a year, he would give her 10% of the group's shares. If she could give birth to a chubby grandson, he would give Ji-hye another 5% of the shares. After having these 15% of shares, Ji-hye would immediately become a major shareholder of the company. To get revenge on her mother-in-law and her bad husband, Ji-hye must get these shares. Ji-hye told Man-ho everything about Tae-wook and Ji-sun's collaboration in swindling the company's money. Man-ho was extremely angry. As soon as he got home, Man-ho beat his son. Ji-sun couldn't stop him. After being beaten by his father, Tae-wook was full of anger. He guessed that Ji-hye had told his father about this. Despite the fact that his two children were still by his side, he beat Ji-hye. After beating her, he left arrogantly. In front of the little child, Ji-hye had to pretend that nothing had happened. Ji-sun also guessed that Ji-hye had told Man-ho about this. When Man-ho was away, Ji-sun tried to cause trouble at the dinner table, but Ji-hye wasn't afraid of her. Ji-hye said that she didn't want to discuss these things with Ji-sun today. Even the niece next to her made fun of Ji-sun. The girls said that eating in silence was their family rule. Ji-sun was furious at the two of them. The weak daughter-in-law that Ji-sun used to bully now dares to act up to her. But Ji-sun can't do anything to Ji-hye. Ji-sun can't even swallow her rice and leaves in anger. Now Ji-hye has 10% of the shares. Ji-hye buys her mother a new apartment. Finally, she doesn't have to live under Ji-sun's face anymore. Ji-hye can freely come and go from her mother's house. Ji-sun knows that Ji-hye is strong now, so she can't touch her for now. Ji-sun can only vent her anger on So-hee. Before they got married, Ji-sun said she wouldn't interfere with So-hee's work, but now she's gone back on her word. Ji-sun asked So-hee to quit her job and stay home to be a full-time housewife. Ji-hye knows that So-hee's current situation is the same as hers before. Fearing that So-hee would not be able to bear it, Ji-hye told So-hee the experiences that Ji-hye had learned over the years. Living in such a heartless family, one must always be patient, waiting for the right moment to regain freedom. But So-hee could not bear it even for a minute. So-hee immediately told this story to her husband, Taehoon. Taehoon immediately went to his father and told this story. That's why Jisun was extremely angry. Jisun not only used insulting words to So-hee, but she also secretly called the press to come, and she laughed and said slanderous words. Jisun said that So-hee was an unfilial daughter-in-law. So-hee's boss knew about this and started looking for a new person to replace So-hee. Jisun did not expect that her cruel actions would cause the two daughters-in-law to unite against her. Ji-hye, who had been bullied and beaten by Ji-sun, had now completely transformed. Ji-hye became the largest shareholder of the company. It took Ji-hye only 3 months to turn the hotel from a loss for 5 consecutive years to a profit. At the shareholders meeting, Man-ho did not hesitate to praise Ji-hye's ability. He said that if she continued to maintain this, Ji-hye could hold 15% of the group's shares and become the largest shareholder. This way, Ji-hye was even closer to her goal of revenge. In the blink of an eye, 8 months had passed. Under Ji-hye's dedicated management, the hotel had made a profit of more than 500 billion won. Man-ho was extremely surprised. He immediately convened a shareholders meeting in front of everyone. He expressed his opinion. Man-ho wanted to appoint Ji-hye as vice president and vote at the upcoming shareholders meeting. The shareholders who had previously looked down on Ji-hye were now convinced by her ability. All the shareholders supported Man-ho's opinion. Ji-hye is also determined to win this position. Only then can she quickly take over the company and complete her revenge plan. The day Ji-hye takes office is approaching, but her useless husband causes trouble again. Taewook is always secretly seeing Mira. No matter what Ji-hye says, Taewook still refuses to go home. In order not to affect her promotion, Ji-hye can no longer stand still. Ji-hye goes to Mira and teaches her a lesson, but Mira still boldly declares that she will take Ji-hye's position. At this point, Ji-hye is really angry, so she grabs Mira's hair and pushes Mira to the ground to beat up. Ji-hye also warned Mira that if you dare to do it again, I will not let you go. Ji-hye now has Man-ho's backing, so Ji-sun cannot do anything to her. Ji-sun had to take her anger out on So-hee. Ji-sun forced So-hee to quit the job that So-hee had loved for many years. So-hee had to go home and be a full-time housewife. Ji-sun thought that she could control So-hee, but she did not expect that Man-ho would appoint So-hee to the company as a department head. So-hee only had to work 2 days a week, but her salary was still 10 times higher than before. After Ji-sun found out, she found an excuse to make things difficult for So-hee. Ji-sun forced So-hee to attend all kinds of useless classes. Her purpose was to turn So-hee into a servant. Because Ji-sun used So-hee like a puppet every day, she was under too much mental pressure. It was very likely that So-hee would become permanently infertile. Taehoon couldn't bear it when he heard about this. He suggested studying abroad and wanted to take So-hee with him, but Ji-sun refused. If So-hee went, there would be no one to serve her anymore. Unexpectedly, Man-ho happily agreed to this. Marriage is indeed the grave of love. Only then did So-hee feel like she was reborn, but disaster struck unexpectedly. Ji-hye's useless husband was seduced by Mira's sweet words and did something shocking. Taewook secretly raised a lot of illegal money to run for a counselor. This was investigated by the authorities, affecting Ji-hye, who was about to be promoted. Even Taehoon had to postpone his plans to study abroad because of this. Taehoon was a prosecutor, so he could only postpone his plans to study abroad until his brother's scandal was resolved. As for Ji-hye, she suddenly received intimate photos of her and her ex-lover. The two had broken up a long time ago, so Ji-hye didn't pay attention to these things. But now was an important time for Ji-hye to be promoted to vice president, so she absolutely wouldn't allow any unfavorable factors to appear. Ji-hye thought it was definitely her ex-lover's trick, but Ji-hye didn't know that the person who used the photos to threaten her was Mira. It turned out that Mira was the younger sister of Ji-hye's ex-lover. Mira wanted to get revenge on Ji-hye for abandoning her brother, so she tried every way to make things difficult for Ji-hye. By the time Ji-hye found out truth, it was too late. Mira had posted those photos online and falsely accused Ji-hye of still being involved with her ex-lover. This immediately became a hot topic. Man-ho was furious after seeing it. He had always considered Ji-hye the heir, but he never expected something like this to happen. He immediately revoked all of Ji-hye's positions and forced her to go home to continue doing housework and taking care of the children. Ji-hye had no choice but to return home. As expected, Ji-hye was greeted by Ji-sun's vicious sarcasm. Ji-sun ignored the child beside her and chased Ji-hye out of the house. The two frightened children quickly called So-hee for help. So-hee had been abused in this house for a year, so she understood Ji-hye's situation very well. But So-hee had no other choice. She could only help Ji-hye take care of the two children. Ji-hye was completely devastated. After 7 years of patience, Ji-hye finally achieved success, but after just one night, everything returned to zero. But things did not stop there. To get revenge on Ji, Mira dragged Ji-hye's younger brother into the matter. Hyun-sung was working at Mira's art gallery, so she forged documents and put all the blame on Hyun-sung and Tae-wook. To save his son, Man-ho used his connections to put all the blame on Hyun-sung. Ji-hye was pushed to the limit. Ji-hye knelt down and begged Man-ho to spare her younger brother, but if Man-ho agreed to Ji-hye, Man-ho's son would have to go to jail, so he could not agree. At this point, Ji-hye had to calm down even more. Finally, she thought everything through. She had to save her younger brother first, then find a way to return to the company and continue her revenge plan. Ji-sun treated So-hee like a servant, causing So-hee to overwork herself to the point of fainting and having to be rushed to the hospital. But when she received the phone call, Ji-sun completely ignored So-hee's life and death. Ji-sun continued to drink tea and chat with her noble friends. The next day, So-hee's friend came to visit her at home and was accidentally caught by Ji-sun. Ji-sun scolded So-hee in front of her friend. Ji-sun also said that So-hee brought worthless people home. This made So-hee's friend angry and leave. To prevent So-hee from continuing to work, Ji-sun even smashed her computer. So-hee had to suppress her emotions for a long time, but finally she couldn't take it anymore. She mustered up all her courage to ask Ji-sun to stop. Ji-sun didn't expect So-hee to dare to oppose her, so Ji-sun quickly called her son and falsely accused So-hee of being rude to her. So-hee completely collapsed. In despair, she asked for a divorce from her husband. Tae-hoon tried to hold on, but So-hee didn't want to stay in this house for another second. This house was like hell. Everything was decided by Ji-sun. There were dozens of servants in the house, but Ji-sun still made things difficult for her two daughters-in-law just because they were from common families and didn't catch her eye. Although Tae-hoon understood So-hee's feelings very well, he didn't dare to go against his mother. Before getting married, Tae-hoon promised to make So-hee happy, but now she lives like a puppet every day. Finally, So-hee couldn't stand it anymore and left home, but she had nowhere to go. Her family only had one older sister, who was her only relative. She didn't want her sister to worry about her, so she had to swallow all her humiliation and return home. She used death to force her husband to agree to a divorce, but he refused. He said that if he had to die, he would die with So-hee. He hoped that So-hee would forgive his mother because she loved Tae-hoon so much. So-hee decided to endure until one day, So-hee had to be hospitalized. Only then did Tae-hoon realize how much pain his mother had caused So-hee. But Ji-sun didn't admit her mistake, but instead blamed So-hee for not knowing how to enjoy life. Leaving their home, So-hee was nothing. Ji-sun scolded So-hee right on the hospital bed. So-hee's sister, who was by her side, couldn't take it anymore. Their parents died early, and So-hee's sister raised her since she was little. So-hee's sister always loved her like a treasure, but at her husband's house, So-hee was tortured like this. In anger, her sister took So-hee home. As for Ji-hye, although she was brutally beaten by Ji-sun, in order to save her younger brother, she ignored Ji-sun's objections and went to the police station to visit her younger brother. Ji-hye told her brother not to say anything during the interrogation, and just to keep quiet. She would rescue him soon. Then Ji-hye began to carry out her plan. First, Ji-hye went to Man-ho and said that she wanted a divorce. In fact, Man-ho really beloved Ji-hye, so Man-ho firmly refused to let her divorce. Man-ho wanted to use the method of restoring her position to make Ji-hye give up the idea of divorce, but it was all in Ji-hye's calculations. No matter what Man-ho did, she would not change her decision. Man-ho had no choice but to contact lawyer Kim to find out about the divorce lawsuit. But what surprised Man-ho the most was that lawyer Kim had resigned the day Ji-hye was stripped of her position. Lawyer Kim even became Ji-hye's right-hand man. With the help of lawyer Kim, Ji-hye found a retired actress. According to lawyer Kim's investigation, the actress's daughter was Tae-wook's daughter. Tae-wook had previously had an affair with the actress for a long time. Ji-hye immediately made a deal with the actress. As long as the actress helped Ji-hye win the divorce, Ji-hye would help the actress return to the entertainment industry. Of course, the actress agreed, but the actress's real purpose in doing so was to take revenge on Tae-wook's betrayal. The next step in Ji-hye's plan was to make her husband's family live in loneliness. Ji-hye returned home to pack her bags and then took her two daughters out of the house. It was not until evening that Man-ho and Ji-sun discovered that their two daughters-in-law had left home. Man, who looked at the empty dining table and felt very upset. He blamed all of this on Ji-sun's cruel behavior. The two obedient daughters-in-law were both chased away, but Ji-sun did not think so. Ji-sun thought she was not wrong. On the contrary, Ji-sun blamed Man-ho that if he did not let Ji-hye manage the company, Ji-hye would not have dared to be so stubborn. It was the daughter-in-law's duty to stay at home and do housework and take care of the children. After hearing this, Man-ho was helpless with his unruly wife. Both daughters-in-law ran away from home. Ji-sun couldn't find a place to vent her anger, so she could only vent her anger on the maid. But she didn't expect that the maid was actually Ji-hye's person. Although Ji-hye had left home, Ji-sun's every move was under Ji-hye's control. control. Today, Tae-wook came to Ji-hae's door. He arrogantly threatened Ji-hae to give up on the divorce. He thought that as long as Ji-hae left his house, she would be nothing. Ji-hae wouldn't be able to win this lawsuit. He didn't want to argue with him, so she told him to go home and wait for a good show. The news quickly reported the secrets between the actress and Tae-wook. There was also news that Ji-hae filed for divorce from Tae-wook and demanded 500 billion won in compensation. After seeing the news, Man-ho was so angry that his blood pressure rose. He didn't understand why he gave birth to such a useless son, had a good wife at home but went out and had an affair. Then Man-ho asked Ji-hae out again to meet. He threatened Ji-hae to give up on the divorce. In Man-ho's eyes, Ji-hae was just the daughter of a poor family but had a good life. He thought Ji-hae was married into a rich family and lived the days that others dreamed of. Ji-hae should be grateful to his family, but now Ji-hae did it. Man-ho warned Ji-hae that if she didn't stop, don't blame him for being cruel. He also declared that he would erase Ji-hae from this world. In the end, he still underestimated his daughter-in-law. Ji-hae had endured for 7 years. At this crucial moment, she couldn't give up easily. Ji-hae directly declared war on Man-ho. Let's see who wins and who loses in the end. Man-ho was completely surprised. He didn't expect Ji-hae to be so stubborn this time. Man-ho directly vented his anger on his wife, Ji-sun, who was used to being stubborn, couldn't stand this. Ji-sun suggested that Man-ho find someone to secretly kill Ji-hae, but they still underestimated Ji-hae. Ji acted one step ahead. Ye asked lawyer Kim to find her doctor friend to get some documents and then submit them to the court as evidence. It turned out that for the past 7 years, Ji-ye had been abused by her husband. Every time she was beaten, Ji-ye was injured all over her body, but for the sake of her family's honor, Ji-ye only dared to secretly go to her friend's small clinic for treatment. The most serious time, Ji-ye even had a miscarriage. Fortunately, Ji-hae was a smart woman. Every time Ji-hae asked her friend to make a diagnosis report and take pictures of the injuries as evidence. In this heartless family life, Ji-hae had long anticipated that one day she would need this evidence. Very quickly, this evidence reached Tae-wook's lawyer, a thick stack of evidence, with more than 100 copies of the evidence of abuse alone. No matter how capable a lawyer was, he would not dare to take on this case. Tae-wook knew he had lost for sure. He angrily stormed into Ji-hae's house and scolded her for being a fake evil woman. Normally, she appears weak, but behind his back, she collects so much evidence to harm him. Ji-hae doesn't want to argue with him. Tae-wook is angry and is about to hit Ji-hae, but Ji-hae pushes him down. Ji-hae clearly tells Tae-wook that she has endured abuse for 7 years. She will never let something like that happen again. Ji-hae goes to So-hee, who has run away from home. The two women in the same situation finally decide to join forces to deal with their husband's poor family, but Ji-sun doesn't know about this. Ji-sun thinks that she can't bully Ji-hae anymore, so she thinks of every way to torture So-hee. Ji-sun calls So-hee and scolds her and tells her to return home immediately, but Ji-sun doesn't know that So-hee has allied with Ji-hae. The two are discussing how to deal with Ji-sun together, so this time, So-hee won't listen to Ji-sun. As for Man-ho, he went to Ji-hae again. He knew that with Ji-hae's scheming and tricks, his stupid son could not win. Moreover, she now had such complete evidence, so Man-ho wanted to negotiate with Ji-hae. He said that as long as Ji-hae canceled the divorce petition, he would meet all the conditions Ji-hae wanted, but the conditions Ji-hae gave made Man-ho's blood pressure skyrocket. Ji-hae not only asked Man-ho to save her younger brother, but she also wanted the position of vice president of the group. If Man-ho could not meet these two conditions, Ji-hae would not cancel the divorce petition. Although Man-ho values Ji-hae's ability, it is dangerous to give power to Ji-hae now. Therefore, he cannot accept Ji-hae's conditions. He thinks that a small person like Ji-hae will not be able to win against him in the end. But the person who came in later made Man-ho change his perception of Ji-hae. This person is Man-ho's trusted lawyer. This lawyer holds all the information of the company, but now the lawyer has become Ji-hae's man. Man-ho is so angry that he almost vomits blood. He takes his anger out on expensive antiques. Only then does he realize how great Ji-hae's ambition is. Man-ho has no choice but to compromise with Ji-hae. Man-ho decides to let Tae-wook turn himself in and vindicate Ji-hae's younger brother Hyun-sung's name, but useless Tae-wook is afraid of death, so he refuses to turn himself in at the police station. Ji-sun knew about this and immediately went to find her husband to ask. Ji-sun said that if Man-ho dared to put her precious son in jail, she would put him in jail too. Meeting such a wife gave Man-ho a huge headache. As for Ji-hee, she started a new action. She went to the prosecutor in charge of the case and secretly revealed part of the truth of the case to the prosecutor. She even gave Mi-ra's address to the prosecutor, but Mi-ra had already received the news and had run away a long time ago. In order to avoid her son going to jail, Ji-sun spared no expense. She pushed a senior director of the company to take the blame. Thanks to that, Hyun-sung was also released innocent. Not long after, Man-ho went to Ji-hae again. After thinking carefully, Man-ho decided to accept Ji-hae's condition, which was to let Ji-hae become vice president. president. Instead, he asked Ji-hae to cancel the divorce petition and hand over the information that lawyer Kim had. As for So-hee, he told Taehoon everything. Taehoon finally realized his mother's true face, so he decided to ally with his wife to fight against his evil mother. Back home, Taehoon argued with his mother. Ji-sun couldn't believe that her youngest son, who always listened to her, was now talking to her like that. She refused to admit her mistakes and blamed So-hee. Ji-sun thought that So-hee must have used sweet words to deceive her son. Ji-sun raised her hand to hit Taehoon to wake him up. Ji-sun told him not to be fooled by the fox, but Ji-sun didn't know that her actions only made her son hate her more. Taehoon also left home, but everyone's betrayal is just the beginning of the miserable life that awaits Ji-sun. Manho is worried that Ji-hae will reveal evidence that is detrimental to the group, so he uses the position as vice president to keep Ji-hae. But Ji-hae will not easily trust Manho anymore. Now she is very careful with every step. Manho also understands Ji-hae's thoughts, so he starts to use 2 children to threaten her. If Ji-hae keeps refusing the vice president position, Ji-hae's 2 daughters will also suffer. Ji-hae may not care about herself, but she may not care about her daughters. Manho even promises to treat Ji-hae as an heir to nurture. After thinking carefully, Ji-hae decides to accept Manho's conditions, but she will not hand over the evidence she holds. Ji-hae only promises Manho to keep it a secret. Just like that, Ji-hae took the 2 children back to her husband's house. So-hee also decided to return to her husband's house. So-hee hiding outside like a fugitive was not the way. It should have been a happy event for 2 daughters-in-law to return at the same time, but Ji-sun was not happy. If Ji-hae succeeded in becoming vice president, Ji-hae would definitely ride on Ji-sun's head. So Ji-sun started to have bad thoughts again. Ji-sun wanted Manho to keep Ji-hae at home to do housework, take care of the children, and serve her wholeheartedly like before. But Manho told Ji-sun not to cause trouble in front of Ji-hae. Otherwise, Manho would kick her out of the house. Ji-sun was completely stunned after hearing this, so Ji-sun came up with another plan. Ji-sun started to try to please So-hee. Ji-sun wanted to trick So-hee into forming an alliance with her to deal with Ji-hae, but So-hee was not a fool. So-hee never forgot what Ji-sun did. So-hee did not believe Ji-sun's sweet words. Not long after, the day of Ji-hae's inauguration ceremony came, Tae-wook saw the news and was so angry that he almost vomited blood. That position should have been his, but was taken away by his wife. Mira was even more desperate. At first, she colluded with Ji-sun to harm Ji-hae and caused Hyun-sung to go to jail. But now, not only did she not have any influence on Ji-hae, Ji-hae also became the vice president of the group. Mira had to live a life of hiding to avoid being caught by the police. At first, Mira wanted to find Ji-sun for help, but now Mira was no longer of any use to her, so Ji-sun wanted to get rid of Mira. Mira was completely devastated. She vowed to make Ji-sun pay dearly. The next day, Mira went to the police station to confess. Because Mira confessed, Tae-wook was also implicated in the embezzlement case. He was extremely scared. He didn't want to go to jail, so he begged his brother for help, but the matter was so serious that even his brother, who was a prosecutor, couldn't protect him. Everything was going in Ji-hae's favor, but the prosecutor who had helped Ji-hae before suddenly made things difficult for her. Ji-hae had promised to give him the Manho company's evidence, but now Ji-hae went back on her word, making the prosecutor completely angry. He vowed to do everything he could to bring Ji-hae down, but Ji-hae wasn't afraid. She would protect her position at all costs. Because Mira confessed, Ji-hae's husband's family's conglomerate was also implicated. The company is facing a major crisis, but Tae-wook hugs beautiful women and gets drunk in nightclubs every day. Now, Ji-hae has become vice president and has power in her hands. She no longer wants to see this useless husband, so she brings a group of bodyguards to meet Tae-wook. After meeting Ji-hae, Tae-wook not only doesn't know how to control himself, he also blames Ji-hae for stealing his vice president position. Tae-wook even wants to hit Ji-hae, but Ji is no longer so easy to bully. She gives Tae-wook a slap. At the same time, the culprit who caused everything, Ji-sun, also sees the news of Mira's confession. Ji-sun is immediately scared, but then again, she thought that her husband is the president of a famous corporation, so the police can't do anything to her. Ji-hae just got home and met Ji-sun. Ji-sun deliberately caused trouble. Ji-sun scolded Ji-hae for not being able to do even the smallest thing. Ji-hae was not worthy of being the vice president of the group. Ji-hae was already having a headache because of this, and now, having to face Ji-sun's vicious words, she was so angry that she couldn't speak. Ji-hae scolded Ji-sun for always putting all the blame on her. Ji-sun was also surprised when Ji-hae dared to talk back to her, but now, she can't do anything to Ji-hae. She doesn't realize the seriousness seriousness of the problem at all. She's still hiding in her secret gallery, drinking wine, listening to music, and enjoying a very comfortable life. But Ji-sun couldn't have imagined that her gallery would soon be destroyed because the paintings inside were all illegally traded by Mira. Ji-hae told Man-ho about this. Man-ho was so angry that he immediately sent someone to destroy Ji-sun's secret gallery. As for So-hee, ever since she returned to this house, she had been dreaming of being tortured by Ji-sun every night. She always had nightmares. She really didn't want to live like this anymore. So-hee directly took the entire bottle of sleeping pills and poured them all into her mouth. The pills quickly took effect. So-hee fell into a drug-induced coma. Luckily, Tae-hoon returned in time. He quickly took So-hee to the emergency room. Thanks to that, So-hee was able to save her life. But this scene was captured by reporters. The new daughter-in-law did something foolish when she moved to her husband's house. When Ji-sun saw the newspaper report, the first thing she thought of was to find her husband to badmouth So-hee. Ji-sun said that So-hee deliberately acted like a fool and deliberately used drugs to tarnish the family's reputation. Ji-sun completely did not realize that she was the one who pushed So-hee to this point. After learning about this, Ji-hae immediately contacted the newspaper that published the news and asked the newspaper to delete all articles about So-hee and recall the newspapers that had been published. Otherwise, she would force these newspapers to close down. The doctor advised Tae-hoon to take So-hee abroad to relieve her stress. This would help So-hee overcome her depression. Ji-sun heard the news and tried to stop him. Ji-sun continued to slander that So-hee was faking her illness. So-hee did this to gain everyone's sympathy. Tae-hoon was extremely angry. He couldn't stand his mother accusing his wife, so he yelled at her. Man-ho couldn't stand it anymore either. Man-ho told his wife to get out immediately. After being discharged from the hospital, So-hee still had not fully recovered. While eating breakfast, So-hee fell asleep tiredly. Ji-sun saw her like that and not only did not care, but also said cruel words. Ji-sun said that So-hee pretended to be sick to avoid housework. Ji-sun said many harsh words in front of everyone, but she did not know that her retribution had come. Man-ho ordered the servants to move all the furniture in Ji-sun's gallery to the landfill to destroy. Ji-sun cried and screamed, demanding that her husband compensate her because those were things she had worked so hard to get. Man-ho was extremely angry and yelled at her, saying that she was a pig-brained person. Hearing her husband say that, Ji-sun realized the seriousness of the problem. She immediately panicked and asked Ji-hae to help her solve these problems because she did not want to go to jail. But Ji-hae had no intention of caring about her. Ji-sun saw that Ji-hae dared to look down on her, so she immediately changed her attitude and scolded Ji-hae for being ungrateful and an unfilial daughter-in-law. Man-ho, who was standing next to her, couldn't stand it anymore, so he scolded his wife. Ji-sun felt extremely hurt. She thought that the people in this family were too heartless. No one was willing to help her. She thought that if she escaped abroad, the police wouldn't catch her. That way, she wouldn't have to go to jail. But she thought too simply. The authorities had already imposed an exit country restriction on her. Only now did Ji-sun feel scared. Ji-sun could only obediently stay at home and wait for legal punishment. As for Ji-hae, she took the initiative to take her husband and daughter out to the suburbs. Tae-wook felt very strange. He thought that Ji-hae had changed her personality and wanted to be a good wife and a mother. He thought that his charm was still quite great. Tae-wook could not have imagined that Ji-hae just wanted to let him enjoy his last happy moment because Ji-hae had received the news in advance that Tae-wook was about to be sent to prison. Now Ji-sun was about to go to prison. Ji-hae asked So-hee out to celebrate the victory, but even now, So-hee still could not escape the psychological trauma. Tae-hoon looked at his wife in front of him and always felt that she had become extremely strange. So-hee is no longer the smiling writer he used to know, but a daughter-in-law who listens to her mother-in-law. Tae-hoon feels extremely regretful because So-hee became like that because of his cruel mother. So he decides to refuse his evening job to take So-hee on a romantic date, but So-hee falls asleep tiredly while waiting for food. Tae-hoon feels very heartbroken. He asks So-hee what her ideal married life is like. So-hee says she wants to live a comfortable and carefree life. She doesn't need to be afraid of anyone. So-hee also wants to do what she likes, perhaps because she spoke up and released pressure in her heart. So-hee slept very well that night, but Tae-hoon is the opposite. He remembers what So-hee said and feels extremely miserable. He can't even meet So-hee's simple and ordinary life. Now that the family company is under investigation and facing bankruptcy, Tae-hoon cannot let So-hee get involved any further. After a night of mental struggle, Tae-hoon finally made a decision. Joo-hae, after 7 years of forbearance, finally put her mother-in-law in jail. Today is definitely a day to celebrate for Ji-hae because the police will soon come to arrest Ji-sun and her fake husband. Although Man-ho doesn't want to see this scene, he has no other choice. It's all his wife and son's fault. In order to protect the group, Man-ho can only let the police deal with his wife and son. As for him, he listens to Ji-hae's arrangement and temporarily flees abroad to avoid trouble. Ji-sun is completely stunned when she hears this. Her husband has been with her for almost her entire life, but now he's abandoning her and running away. This makes her so angry that she bursts into tears. Ji-sun still couldn't accept this fact. It was obvious that yesterday she was still the wife of a chaebol, but now she was about to go to jail. Ji-sun really couldn't accept it. Ji-sun started making unreasonable demands on Ji-hye. Ji-sun thought that her life was more valuable than Ji-hye's life. After all, Ji-hye was so young that Ji-hye should go to jail instead of her. But Ji-sun forgot that Man-ho had fled abroad, so this family was completely under Ji-hye's control. Therefore, Ji-hye would not let Ji-sun continue to bully her. Ji-hye told Ji-sun to stay at home and wait for legal punishment. After saying that, she did not look back and left. At the same time, Tae-hoon, in order not to implicate his wife, directly filed for divorce from So-hee. But So-hee did not agree. She had guessed her husband's intentions, so no matter what, she refused to divorce. He wanted to overcome difficulties with her husband. Seeing that his wife did not leave him, Tae-hoon became even more embarrassed. He heartlessly said harsh words to chase So-hee away, but So-hee refused to leave him. Reluctantly, Tae-hoon could only take So-hee back to her mother's house. As for Ji-hye, she quickly contacted her younger brother. She wanted her younger brother to take 2 daughters away. She didn't want her children to see their father and grandmother being taken away by the police. After all, the 2 children were still too young. She then contacted the prosecutor and told him to wait until she took the 2 children away before taking action. Not long after, the police arrested Tae-wook, who was so scared that he admitted his guilt on the spot. Ji-sun, on the other hand, was the opposite. She loudly shouted that she was wronged in front of the media, but the police completely ignored her words. After everything was over, Ji-hye returned to her mother's house. She hugged her mother tightly and cried. Finally, after 7 years of suffering, she had completed her plan of revenge. After this crisis, Ji-hye became the person Man-ho trusted the most, so Man-ho decided to hand over the group to Ji-hye to run. Man-ho declared Ji-hye the heir to the group, so he was finally freed from her miserable life. After overcoming this crisis with Tae-hoon, the 2 decided to officially divorce. Although they were extremely regretful, they still held back their tears. Tae-hoon understood that perhaps only when So-hee was freed, the damage his mother had caused, So-hee could gradually recover. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed, and everything was progressing in a good direction. Ji-sun, who was serving her sentence in prison, refused to sit still and started causing trouble. She deliberately pretended to have a terminal illness, so she was transferred to the hospital. She thought she was so smart that she could fool everyone, but no matter how she played tricks, she could only gain a little freedom for a short time. She even acted in front of Man-ho. She said she had cancer and was about to die, but she didn't expect that Man-ho would see through her intentions early on. Man-ho even directly exposed truth. He thought Ji-sun was just making trouble. He asked if she wanted to continue to harm the group. After letting Ji-sun breathe fresh air outside for a day, Man-ho would still send her back to prison to continue serving her sentence. But Ji-sun still vaguely thought that she was free, so she started to act smug again. When Ji-sun learned that So-hee and her son were divorced, Ji-sun immediately called and scolded So-hee. Ji-sun thought that So-hee was still the weak and obedient daughter-in-law like before, but now that So-hee is divorced, she has nothing to do with her ex-husband's family anymore. She doesn't have to endure her ex-mother-in-law's anger anymore. So So-hee threw her phone into the river. Ji-sun was extremely angry. As for Tae-wook, he also wanted to learn from his mother and use the method of pretending to be sick to get out of prison, but Ji-hye's method made him desperate because they were once husband and wife. Ji-hye gave Tae-wook a book on how to escape from prison. She told Tae-wook to study the content carefully so that he could successfully escape from prison. She also warned Tae-wook that it was best not to have other intentions, otherwise she would use all means to keep him in prison indefinitely. Tae-wook looked at the book that Ji-hye left behind and remembered the scene where he and his mother beat Ji-hye every day. Now he was extremely regretful, but now that he knew how to regret, it was too late. Stepping out, Ji-hye smiled triumphantly. She did not look back, but immediately walked forward and went to find the happy life she always wanted. Today's movie ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please comment below to let us know.